Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Jeff Mitchell. I believe leaders must be anticipatory to chart a path forward. We can either be proactive and move forward, or sit back and be reactive and risk falling behind. Wayfinders lead. The NCAA Pathway Program is designed to incubate and inspire the next generation of executives in our profession. I am grateful for my pathway experience and encourage others to explore their own opportunity in the NCAA Pathway Program.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. Our guest today is Jason Penry. Penry is the founder of Penry Advisors. Greetings, Jason. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ty.
No problem. What I understand about Penry Advisors is that you help athletics departments raise money. That's the underlying principle of the whole business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the focus is how do we save time, solve problems, and ultimately raise money. But what I've found being at places, larger places like Texas A&M or smaller places, D2 place like Angelo State University, it's just about being highly organized. There's thousands of prospects, even hundreds of thousands of prospects, and there's only so much time in the day. So how do you spend your time to get that return on investment to help your student athletes, coaches, and programs? And that's really what it's about, is how do I spend my time to be most effective? And that's my focus.
That's your focus, which is excellent. Of course, you have, in terms of college athletics, over 20 years in the industry, academic fundraising. You've done some wild stuff like help start a medical school, which we'll dive into here shortly. And so being in the business a little over a year, I mean, when you approach an institution or an athletics department about helping them fundraise, are you helping them with the concepts of fundraising, or are you is it Amplify? Well, one of these, Pacquiao has a company that's like a third-party fundraiser. Like, tell me exactly how you're set up.
Yeah, so I'm taking the model of higher ed philanthropy. There's been a number of consultants that provide counsel. It's strategy, right? So
okay.
You can make or break a giving year based on really 10, maybe 20 gifts every year. And so I'm taking the higher ed philanthropy consulting model, counsel model, and applying it to athletics. And that's really what I've done. So that model has been around in higher ed philanthropy for 20 years.
Okay.
And now just applying that same principle, but in one word, strategy. It's about strategy. Again, how do you get the most return on investment of your time? Because you can get lost down rabbit holes pretty quickly in fundraising, again, with thousands of prospects, hundreds of thousands of prospects, and only so much time in the day.
Tell me the process. So let's say the Matt Roberts School of Athletic Development comes to you and says, hey, we want to raise money because we need to expand our scholarship fund, our general fund, or something like that. Tell me your process of going in. Do you look at their data, or do you ask a bunch of questions? Tell me your process from the process you can share that's not giving away your secrets, right?
Yeah, no.
From the beginning to, yeah.
Absolutely. So it starts with a materials request, and I try to learn as much as possible about the current processes and systems and strategy. And from there, I have a clearer picture, and typically back and forth follow-up questions. But the one thing that I've done or tried to do is build a relationship. I worked with Carr Sports Associates with Bill Carr, my late great mentor, who I have a tremendous amount of respect and miss the guy. But one of the things that we did with Carr Sports is you go in there and do a consulting project, and then you'd helicopter out, drop a plan on their desk, and just say good luck. I'm simplifying, of course, but what I wanted to do is for accountability on both sides to have a longer term relationship, because fundraising is not a microwave industry. It's a crock pot. It takes time. So that was the thing that I do is, and then either through weekly, sometimes just monthly calls, check-ins to make sure that we're on track and just to help with any kind of challenges that arise. And I found that model in my first year to be pretty successful. I feel comfortable with it. I feel like I'm making an impact, and hopefully some of my partners would feel the same way. I think they do.
I want to lean into that a little bit. So there's a information gathering. You start off if they want to engage your services, do you take whoever asks, or do you look at the information and say, I'm not going to be able to help you? Like, how do you decide when to take a client on first?
There's only been one client that I haven't told I've been able to, that I felt like I would be able to help. I'm a boutique consultancy.
Yeah.
There's limitations to that. So I know my limitations, and I never try to promise something I can't deliver on, because that's not a trust builder, a long-term play, frankly. So I have partnered with a larger higher ed philanthropy consulting firm like BWF that has over 100 consultants. That's one of the major power players. And then, with baseball and then some other degree, consultant, strategic planning, et cetera, with CSA as well. So I know my limitations, and but in terms of working with clients, typically I haven't reached out to anyone to try to sell my services, but I'm trying to just create awareness and let people know that, look, I have experience big and small and had a level of success based on the people I surrounded myself with and our focus. And I feel confident, very confident, and that I can deliver. And if I feel like I can't deliver for them, like I said, there's only been one other time in the first year, but I don't take on something I can't deliver on at a high quality.
So somebody reaches out and you feel like you can take on the business. So you gather information, you apply your process to that information after the back and forth and asking a bunch of questions. And then you sit down and strategize in terms of, this is where I think you could go. This is what I think you can do.
Yeah.
We always hear every situation's unique, but I wonder, when it comes to the point of actually sitting down and strategizing, is there a common formula, for the lack of a better word, or common algorithm that you sit down with people to start with?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've done, you start with, where are you? And that's typically some level of feasibility study, or assessment, I should say. But it starts with the assessment, where are you? And then the vision, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And then the third and last, is the plan. And when I was at Oklahoma State, I didn't really know Boone Pickens well, still the largest donor in the history of college athletics. But I observed a lot, and I did have a few interactions. And one of his sayings was, a fool with a plan can beat a genius without a plan.
Okay.
And I apply that to fundraising. If you're highly organized, again, there's only so much time in the day. If you're highly organized on the right things, you can get a lot more accomplished. And then the third piece is, what's the plan? How are we going to attack this? How are we going to approach this on a weekly, monthly, annual basis? And we know where we want to go, and how are we going to get there? Let's start to work backwards and reverse engineer and focus on the things that really matter.
Okay.
And that's the strategy piece, without giving away the secret sauce, right? But there are some tools, and I call it the system. And again, big places and small places that I've served and have experience. There's certain things, tools that you have in place to make sure that, number one, communication. Alignment's a big deal. Alignment is communication. So that you're aligned, you have a level of communication, you have a level of coordination, collaboration, but also, Ty, from an accountability perspective, that fundraisers, leaders, and everyone are working together and accountable to do what they say they're going to do.
Right.
And so that we have those pieces. again, I can talk about this all day,
Yeah,
all day long. So
that's
I
why
get
we're here.
excited to talk about it because I feel like I feel like I learned from some of the great ones just through observations or them telling me, Jason, don't do that, do this. But I still say, interestingly, Mike Holder, even without the Boone Pickens gift, if you look at it, gifts, if you even take those out, he's still the most successful fundraising AD in the history of college athletics.
Right.
And, I learned a lot from observing him and some others. Stu Starner at the 12th Man Foundation.
Hmm.
Everybody thinks their mentors are the best. Well, I really think mine were the best.
That's
I
hilarious.
really think mine were the best.
Okay, yes, that's hilarious. Okay, so then I guess a follow-up question is, we're a year in existence, and are people asking you about specific projects to help strategize, or is it general fundraising for the athletics department? Tell me about the kind of business you are getting so far.
It's general
Okay.
fundraising, and sometimes approach at organizational structure. And I always say, let's keep it simple. Let's don't have dual reports. Just again, not giving away too much, but having dual reports, I've had it, and let me tell you, it's hard enough to keep one boss happy, but keeping two bosses happy and in the
And when
know,
you
it
say
gets
do
tough.
reports, you mean when you say do reports, you're talking about reporting to the school and reporting to like the athletics director, or tell me about
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
sometimes, especially because, Ty, what I've really observed is the pace of play in athletics fundraising versus academic fundraising is different.
Yeah.
And many in the academic fundraising world do not understand that
Okay.
the longer view tools like endowments or
Hmm.
planned giving are de-emphasized in athletics because you need money and you need it now
Right.
in
Yeah.
athletics. So when there's some of the clients I work with, what I try to do is tell them and help them to better understand the differences. There are a lot of similarities, but there are differences. There are in fact differences, and what I've learned is there are a lot of collaborations or need for collaborations. And the people I work with are phenomenal. The clients I work with are phenomenal. They're open to ideas, and it's just been a lot of fun. But yeah, getting back to academics versus athletics,
Yeah.
there are differences, there are similarities, but it's just important just to try to better understand, and
Right.
that's what I try
Dude,
to do.
which is an excellent way to do it. There's like four questions that are coming in my brain. I'm trying to remember them as I ask them. But one is relative to the clients. Are they coming to you like just taking over an athletics program, or are you getting people who've been in the chair for a while and it's like things aren't working and we need to you know what I mean? Like, what is the problem that you've based on so far, the problem that you see you're solving most? New athletic director, new department, or like things have been going this way and we need to change, but I've been here for 5 or 6 years already.
Yeah, so let me start from a higher view and then drill down.
Yep.
What I would say is, I mean, it's well documented the need for not only some level of cost containment, but revenue generation in
Yeah, 100%.
athletics. It's well documented, right? So they want to produce more money, and sometimes it's just taking literally a record-breaking year or program in terms of fundraising and take it to the next level.
Oh,
And
okay.
maybe Ty, I'm reasonably priced, especially compared to some of the bigger firms. So for what many say that for a nominal fee, provide maybe a handful of edges that increase times 10 or times
Yeah.
25. And that's really what I'm aiming for is how can I supercharge their fundraising efforts or help to and by providing a level of focus, because again, there's the in a resource short environment, collaborations are the key. How can you
Hmm.
work with your university advancement partners to better utilize those relationships to help raise more money? Or how do you just focus your time? You can't go hire 3 more fundraisers in a resource short environment. So how do you focus your time and efforts in a way that's going to be most beneficial to the people you serve, your athletes, coaches? So that's the focus. So we do drill down, but that's kind of the macro. But drilling down, many of the challenges that I help to solve is, how do you find the next generation of donors? How do you find, and I'm using air quotes here, new donors?
Yes. Right.
How do you find new donors? And those are some of the I would say reoccurring questions that I'm asked.
Yeah, which is an interesting question, right? How do I find new donors? So, are you charged by the athletics director, or are there presidents who say, I need somebody to help athletics with fundraising? Does that question make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And the answer is yes. All the above. all the above.
Huh?
But it all comes down to the need for revenue generation. It's never been greater. And it seems to, frankly, I wrote my dissertation on this, revenue generation and cost containment. And that's been the history of college athletics, is the need for more is always there, and the need to be more efficient is always there. And that's where my consultancy, that's exactly where I'm at, is that crossroads of the need to be efficient as possible, and the need to generate more revenue.
So presidents and athletic directors will engage you to help out to raise money.
Yeah.
And your primary focus is helping athletics directors raise money.
Primarily, although I work with a couple of presidents and also a dean, but those are pre-existing relationships. And again, having academic fundraising background as well certainly helps.
And like you mentioned, finding new donors, right? Which I guess everybody wants to be able to try to do that. In your process of discovery and then planning and then execution, is that something that you're always able to do, is find new donors in this last year?
Yeah, so the donors are always there, but I always, what I say is, I always go back to this phrase. Like, it always comes back to this: involvement precedes investment, almost always.
Okay.
Especially at the highest levels, that's obvious. But even at the lower levels, the $250, $500 a year gifts, is how do you connect with donors and potential donors? And again, that comes back to strategy, and why I founded the company. I think it can add value is it comes down to that phrase, and then we build out strategy, frankly, around that phrase is involvement precedes investment, almost always. And it's different for a $500,000 a year type of donor at the elite leadership fund that I've seen, or down to the $100 a year donor. And there's differences, but there are also a lot of similarities.
So you're consulting on cultivation, like consulting on relationships. Like, we got to work on our process for cultivating these donors because of the involvement part. That's super interesting to me, right? It's teaching people how to cultivate, how to develop the relationship, right?
Yeah, there's tools in the toolbox that you certainly need to have available to use. I'll put it that way.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, so the strategy, part of the strategy, whether you're pursuing the biggest gifts that really move the needle, or the gifts that you need to keep the operating budget humming, it's kind of I've done both. I've even I started over 20 years ago, and I'm glad I did this. I started entering data.
Yeah.
I did that for about 3 or 4 months at the 12th Man Foundation. I was a data entry person, but it really helped me in terms of learning from A to Z the entire operation. And again, why I think I'm positioned to add value to departments to help them. Again, it's all about there's only so much time in the day. The need for raising money is there, and how are we going to get our most bang for the buck in terms of use of time?
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to when all is said and done.
Is teaching people how to be more efficient, basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I consult on efficiency in the fundraising process, involvement for investments, consult on cultivation and relationships, how to do that better, faster, and have more bang
Yes,
for your buck,
because
more
again,
bang
you
for your
can't,
time, right?
because the answer is not always we're going to hire 2 more people to handle these challenges or issues that we're facing. And oftentimes I'm finding that is not an option. That is not an option.
Hire more people. Yeah. That's extra interesting. So during the time you were chief of staff at Arkansas State, the president charged you with starting a medical school. And I imagine working in athletics and even becoming chief of staff, which sounds like a people and operations position, you don't really expect in your career somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to start a medical school and you're going to help us start it. So tell me about that process of A, being approached to do it by the president, but then B, from our talk offline, it sounds like you just took the approach that you understood, which was fundraising, and used that approach to help start this medical school. Give us some insight on that.
Yeah, so I always love telling the story because it's kind of goofy the way that it all unfolded. But yeah, the chancellor came in my office and told me that I would be the point person to lead the medical school. And I told him, I said, Tim, I know nothing about med schools.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Jason, you're going to figure it out. You're smart. So I literally, within 2 minutes, I turned to my computer, my PC, and typed in how to start a medical school on Google. And then 3 years later, we had the first medical school to open in over 100 years. And that's because of the teamwork of literally hundreds. But it comes down to, the same principles of fundraising, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you have to get the right people involved for a fundraising project to make it happen. Yep. And in this case, we had our founding dean was the first Black female dean of any medical school, who happened to be Diana Ross's sister.
Yeah,
and she taught me so many lessons from her experiences. And that she always said, we had detractors, some that for their own interests didn't want the med school to happen. And I'll put it that way kindly. And she would always say, we always keep the high road, because in the long term, the high road always wins. Don't go down to their level. Don't let them bring you down to their level. And what I was talking about earlier, see, a piece of her, she would always say, in a resource short environment, collaborations are key, which I just said a few minutes ago. But I learned so much from her. So we got the right people involved. And then just like fundraising, we had to be highly organized because we had to create more GME, graduate medical education, also known as residency programs. That was the pivotal issue, and we had to get that done. So how do you get it done? What are the 30 hospitals? We had our prospect list, and we worked the prospect list, last step, next step, and where we want to land the plane. And so it all worked out well, but it's the same principles as a fundraiser could be applied for that project, which I'm very proud of all the people that I got to work with that made it happen. It was a total team effort. And that's what fundraising is. It's a team effort.
So this was the first medical school to open in the state of Arkansas in 100 years, right? Did I hear that correctly? And then you hire the first Black woman who is a dean of a medical school. This is in the country?
Yeah, she was already a dean of a medical school, but that's who we hired. And
so her coming to Arkansas wasn't her first. She wasn't the first Black. Okay, but she was to be wherever she was when she got that job. She was the first Black woman to be a dean of a medical school. Okay,
she's a legend, right. And can be Googled. Dr. Barbara Ross Lee, hyphen Lee, and but again, the point is it's just like fundraising, getting the right people involved, the experts, the superstars in this case, can help you get a project, just like having a lead donor. Again, getting the right people involved make all the difference.
So I got questions about starting medical school, especially when you start talking about the residencies. So did you hire her first, or did you fund? What was the first step? Okay, I look up how to start a medical school. Are there articles on the internet that says yes, step one is this? Like, what did you do first? Like, I imagine you want the person who's going to lead the program in there. Like, tell me, you had to sell her on a dream because the building wasn't built. I mean, tell me about that whole aspect, right?
Yeah. So again, using the analogy of fundraising, first thing that we did was reach out to. I went and visited, just like athletic directors do now, visit other facilities at other universities to see how they want to plan and then fundraise for certain facilities.
Yep.
We did the same thing. Visited 7 medical schools. I did. And then you kind of learn and ask a lot of questions. And that way, when you build yours, right, you're gonna know what better to do. So we did that benchmarking, and yeah. So the process was, there was an emerging trend, Tai, that we learned that we didn't need approximately $75 million in the coffers right away to start. And again, this is unrelated to fundraising. This is when I was chief of staff, and I just kept the project in addition to fundraising. And but we learned the steps. But I would say that we did our benchmarking, and then we got Dr. Barbara Ross Lee involved, and she knew exactly kind of how to unfold the process. We had a plan, and we worked the plan. And we had hospitals that we had to partner with, because the 3rd and 4th year rotations in many osteopathic medical schools, there's not a teaching hospital. I would always say it to like Lions Club and thing. There's not a one big box area to do all of it. It's done in communities. So we had to do it. And that's why a lot of osteopathic physicians gravitate to primary care areas and more generalist areas, because they have training in these communities of 20,000 or 50,000. But we got the rotations. We knew who we were going to talk to. We visited with them. We presented to their boards. I made a lot of presentations. They were like, who is this guy? I'm sure they were saying, but we presented, we secured those 3rd and 4th year rotations. We brought in a consultant to help us with the residency training programs and how that connects to federal funding. And those were our experts. So again, all of this can be analogous with fundraising, but yeah, it was quite a process. Don't get me started on this. I can talk for another hour.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me, right? Because you do your research, you figure out what you need to do, so you start, but then you also want to make sure you hire somebody in who's an expert that's going to lead the program, so she becomes a partner in developing and building this thing. And then you got to go out and do all the, for lack of a better word, the minutia that is actually important to having a medical school. When you talk about residencies in different hospitals, or you talk about communities and the type of doctors, right? Osteopathic. And so you are getting this inherent education on all things medical school as you're doing this, setting up these relationships, right? Cultivating these relationships with people who need to buy into the program and do all these different types of things. And then you have to develop the curriculum, right? Then there has to be a staff. And I mean, at some point, do you pass it over to her name was Dr. Ross, pass it over to her and allow her, okay, we got it to this point. Now it's an area I don't understand. So it's your job. Like, tell me about that part.
That's right. I had approximately 4 years of involvement. And then when they started classes, let's just say they definitely didn't want me part of that. But, right. But yeah, just like fundraising, though, it's funny you mentioned that, you know, the process, and the process was also, you know, there were Arkansas State alums like the late Steve Bryant, who tragically died in a plane accident this year. But he, for example, helped me opened the doors to a hospital in Batesville, Arkansas. That was a key piece of it. But using those connections, referrals, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in fundraising and I'm reaching out as a fundraiser and I want to connect with Ty Brown, it's so much easier to connect with Ty when you can say, hey, your best friend Bill says I ought to reach out to you, Ty.
Yeah.
And having that pre-existing relationship of trust with someone and a mutual friend, it goes a long way. So again, using those same principles and applying them to that project, it worked. It worked.
Yeah,
And
that's super interesting.
I was surprised because you're doing something for the first time, you don't have a level of confidence, and it takes grit and hard work to get it done, and build relationships and collaborations, and that's what we did. It was incredible. It was a fun team effort.
All right.
And we literally, when I say hundreds of people, it literally included hundreds of people.
I'll ask one or two more questions about that part of your life, and then we can move forward to wrap the conversation. You mentioned there were challenges when you start. People that were naysayers, I guess. What Dr. Ross, was that her name? What she pointed out, like people. Dr. Ross Lee, he said.
Yeah.
Okay, well, she pointed out that you're going to have your naysayers when we take the high road. So why would people be against a medical school? A is the first question. And then the second question is, now you're hiring a Black woman to lead the program in the South, right? So tell me about that. She probably faced a number of challenges that she had overcome just being that. But to tell me about that part that you were probably exposed to working on this project. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I learned so much from her. And being a female, even, when she went to medical school at Michigan State, and just after she graduated,
which is a good school, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a good school. I think I know someone I'm talking to right now that went to school there. Yeah. But yeah, so again, I learned so much from her, the challenges that she faced, and yeah, being in the South, I think. The Ross family's originally from, I want to say it was Alabama, and I forget the exact town or city. So It was personal to her. But yeah, there were naysayers as well because what I would always say is, let's look at it this way. Let's don't look at it as there's only so much pie and don't take any of mine. Let's talk about how we can work together and work as a team to collaborate to help Team Arkansas increase the number of physicians per capita. When you're at the bottom in terms of health outcomes, diabetes, all these things, let's work together and figure this out together. So there were some folks that just thought, look, it's been this way for decades and this is what it's all going to be. And that's why it's so important to be exposed to different ideas and have diversity of thought and not try to think the same way, because it can lead to some outstanding things. That was a big lesson of mine, that just because it's been this way for 100 years doesn't mean it has to stay this way. Let's work together. Let's be creative and innovative and do it for the greater good. And when you're doing things for the greater good, it's just so easy to wake up every morning and put in the time. There's no shortcut, right? You got to put in the time.
So that perspective, that last thing you said, right? How you had to convince other people who were worried about being threatened that we are another medical school here in Arkansas, and help them see the bigger perspective. Like, hey, let's look at the state of Arkansas instead of worried about our local, right, relevance. Take that to college campus and athletics. I hear about, from doing over 500 to 600 interviews, you hear about faculty who don't really grasp the importance of athletics. And now you're working in fundraising where it's like, we need to bring more money into athletics. And the history professor may be like, wait a minute, why are we not investing more into history? Why are we spending, tell me about, do you ever face any of that when you're helping people strategize for bringing more revenue for athletics in the work you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to understand, I've done studies where I've reached out and tried to learn about how colleges like agriculture and architecture and business, engineering, how these colleges receive 25, $50 million gifts. And it was interesting to me in doing the qualitative research that many of the donors were introduced, I'll put it that way, to giving to the university through athletics.
Okay.
And It was amazing to me how the really good deans and presidents, how they, I'll use the word leverage athletics for benefit of the entire university.
Mm-hmm.
But it's such an incredible tool. The benefits obviously are there for individuals to learn teamwork and overcoming adversity. But also at the local level or at the university level, macro area, it connects people to the university. And I've been part of one other university without maybe a robust athletics program, and it's different. It's different, and the way people perceive the university is different.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have these opportunities for social gatherings and team building and family, all these things. And I think it's just so important. And one other thing I would say, one of the consultants that we used for the medical school was Trip Umbach. And Trip Umbach, Paul Umbach, a good friend of mine, he's done economic impact studies for Tennessee and a number of other universities, Minnesota, Iowa. But one of the things that you see is athletics has tremendous economic impact. And sometimes people say things about economic impacts, and I always say, well, okay, let's just cut it in half. That's still an incredible amount of economic impact. So, I always say athletics, there's no doubt. We need to begin to frame it because my old boss was a commissioner of higher education, Tai, and he introduced me, and I had lengthy conversation with 6 other state commissioners. And what they say is like, hey, the macro view, especially with the demographic cliff, $1.75 trillion in student debt, the questioning of the value of higher education, these things, it's going to get louder in the next 5 years. It's just the data says that it's going to get louder. So as people question the value of higher ed and within that athletics, I think it's important to see things more as an investment and not a cost. Athletics can be a great investment if utilized properly.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. It goes back to similar to starting a medical school, right? Let's look at the big picture as opposed to being worried about if this dollar is going to history or to athletics. The bigger picture is athletics, the economic impact for the entire university is excellent.
Absolutely. Just like the medical school, right? Hey, we can, there doesn't have to be just this amount of pie. Let's grow. Yeah. Let's work together to grow the pie. Maybe we can work together and be better through synergies, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, Jason, as usual, this has been an excellent conversation, and I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Tai.
Yes, sir. That was Dr. Jason Penry. Jason is the founder of Penry Advisors, where they help athletic directors raise money. And of course, I am Tai Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.